All the cats are accounted for and doing well this morning. Ice from the bird and cat water bowls. I bring them in the house, turn them upside down, and the ice pops out pretty quick. That will probably refreeze, but hey, it's fresh water for now. 23 right now. Looks like it's about 54 degrees here in the garage. Don ran the space heater all night. Poor Johnny's not feeling good today. He came home with a sore throat last night, and the sore throat's worse, and he's got a headache, and he's hot and cold, so he's, you know, most likely got a fever. And I mean, on one hand, it's good he didn't have to go to school today, that it's a holiday. On the other hand, it's a bummer that his day off, he's sick. Don did some detailing on Ruby and pulled her out for me about 30 minutes ago. I'm headed to Stick Boy to have coffee with Kelly and try to get my 1 million kilometer trading badge. I'm at 850 some odd thousand, and we believe we can do that today. So that would be awesome. Looking forward to chatting with her and doing our what's about monthly get together for lunch and Pokemon. Johnny's still not feeling any better. I've got Don crunching a few numbers on efficiency with Ruby. We were watching News Coulomb's video this morning. He did some efficiency testing with Bjorn, who's over in the States. And we just had a couple of comments about it that we thought might be relevant to the conversation, I guess. So we'll film that when I get back home. And it's still cold. I don't know, Ruby says it's 42, but that's just because she's not picked up the right temperature yet. It's really not above freezing here. She was just nice and toasty in the garage. Be interesting to see if I have full regen or not. I'm seeing the yellow dotted line, so I would say that's a no. As it turns out, something came up and Kelly wasn't able to meet me, so we rescheduled for Friday. And I'm just enjoying the warmth and the sunshine, and I'm playing a little pogo in downtown Fuquay. Here comes Donnie. He's such a good boy. I love you.
Girl.
Hi, Donnie.
That's a sexy looking car.
Yeah, I got this guy, keeps it nice and clean for me. So Don and I, all on our own, both determined those flags over there are not widening the curve. They are
turn lanes.
Yeah, to a new development. They're taking down trees over there today. They've put up plastic along Wagstaff to keep the dirt from going down into the drainage ditch.
And they got the park, South Park has a paved walking bike trail to the environmental park, and it basically runs along the back edge of this property that they're doing this new housing development. And there's all these little surveyor flags along that part right there where it joins the walkway, you know, off the basically the easement there. So yes, and they're back in there with that heavy equipment that we noted yesterday. They're taking down, pulling up stumps and things like that. They're taking out the trees. So they're basically clearing that out to plan a new subdivision.
I'm a little sad about that.
Yeah, but I'm very happy with our detective work. I remember my mom one time, she saw a car that was covered with mud, and she said that car's been on a muddy road. And I think, you know, after it becomes like super obvious, we figured it out.
Yeah, it's probably on some planning map for the town too. We just missed it.
Right, and this is one of the problems. Well, I read the paper. It's the Raleigh paper. Fuquay Varina doesn't have a paper. They have a monthly newsletter type thing, and maybe the newsletter might have put this out, but I don't recollect seeing it.
Well, you know, right across from South Park, there's a rezoning.
I saw that sign.
Yeah, I don't know what that exactly means, but that's probably not good
request
either.
For comments about rezoning a property that's going to be decided by the town commission at some date in the future. That's right.
But that's close to that development area too, so I don't know.
Well, Fuquay is the last part of Wake County that you can develop in at any kind of reasonable price. I didn't say it was inexpensive. I just said it was reasonable. Right. There's an 800 home unit going in over there by the library. A couple days ago, I showed you a video.
The new library.
The new library. Behind the new library, there's going to be 800 more homes put in over there. So Fuquay is filling out. And I'm hoping that this new subdivision means that we'll get fiber on our side of the road. They have, I mean, certainly now with that subdivision and the other subdivision being that close, that they're going to probably run fiber into there. And hopefully, since they've crossed Wagstaff, that
maybe
means
they'll
come
tack
up
us
our
on.
way.
Yeah, we can hope.
We can hope.
A couple YouTubes from Bjorn Nyland, who's in the States doing range tests on Model 3, and also News Coulomb, who has a Chevy Bolt. They did a head-to-head range test this weekend. And everybody's really hung up on this watts per mile. Now, look, I worry about watts per mile too, because ultimately that's what you actually pay for. But really, let's sit here and think about it just a little bit. Is watts per mile really something that most people are even going to notice? So here's an example of specifically for us with our electricity rate of 7 cents per kilowatt, and the fact that we drive 25,000 miles a year. What's the cost difference between our Model X, which gets 350 watts per mile, or a Model 3, which gets 250 watts per mile? Well, the difference in kilowatt hours over the entire year to go 25,000 miles would be the difference between 8,750 kilowatt hours and 6,250 kilowatt hours. And if you multiply those numbers by 7 cents per kilowatt, the Model X is going to cost $612.50. And the Model 3 is going to cost considerably less, $437.50. Well, the difference in those two numbers is $175 per year. Or if you break it down, that's $14.58 per month. So you probably would notice maybe a $14.58 difference in your monthly power bill. But on a cost per mile, it's only costing us 0.7 cents per mile to drive the Model X versus to drive the Model 3. So that's the difference between 350 and 250 watts per mile. Just to break it down a little bit, just to go on and calculate it out, the cost per mile, if you look in the blue square, you will see it's 2.45 cents for the X to electricity cost per mile, or 1.75 cents cost per mile in electricity only for the Model 3. Now, Marianne's going to update the sheet here to 10 cents a mile and 10 cents a kilowatt hour and 10,000 miles a year. And this makes the math really easy. So if your electricity costs 15 cents a mile, your numbers will be 50% higher than this. If you drive 15,000 miles a year instead of 10,000 miles, it'll be 50% higher. You can adjust numbers, but basically the difference between 250 watts per mile and 350 watts per mile is going to work out to be 1 cent per mile. So that's what it's going to cost you to go between that. This is a lot different than driving a car that gets 25 miles a gallon versus 35 miles a gallon. So really, all this talk and worry about watts per mile really isn't that germane, especially if you take into account things like tires. You're actually spending, at least typically, if you spend about $250 for a tire, a set of tires is going to cost you approximately $1,000. If you get 22,000 miles out of those tires, the tires to drive a mile is going to cost you 4.5 cents per mile. In other words, it's going to cost you over twice what the electricity costs. So really, the electricity cost, the watts per mile, is not as significant. Now, you may say, well, gee, 22,000 miles per set of tires, I get way more than that. Well, so do I on my ICE cars. I get the 40, 50, 60. I think on my GMC, I got 70,000 miles out of the last set. But for whatever reason, Teslas, because they're heavier, they accelerate harder. They seem to really like to wear out tires. So we only got, we're averaging about 22 to 23,000 miles per set of tires. Okay, so from a electricity cost point of view, watts per mile isn't so important. So what is important about watts per mile? Well, it does affect how long it can take to take a trip, a long distance trip. You know, if you have enough range to cover your all your errands every day, you charge every night. You don't care if the car takes 3 hours to charge or 3 hours and a half to charge. It doesn't matter. But when you're taking a trip, it can matter. So here is using the Tesla travel website. And I basically said I want to drive from Raleigh to Atlanta, which is a distance of 411 miles according to the Tesla's tool. And I'm going to need to make, and if I take our model 100D, it says I'm going to have to make 2 stops. One stop is going to be in Charlotte for 30 minutes. And then another stop's going to be in Greenville, South Carolina for 50 minutes. So I'm going to spend a total of 1 hour and 20 minutes charging to take this trip from Raleigh to Atlanta. Now let's take that same trip in a Model 3 long range. It's the same 411 miles. And also, I'm still going to make 2 stops. One's going to be in Charlotte and one's going to be in Greenville. But the difference this time, when I get to Charlotte, instead of 30 minutes, I'm only going to stop for 20 minutes. And when I get to Greenville, instead of stopping for 50 minutes, I'm only going to stop for 40 minutes. So I'm only going to stop to charge for a total of 1 hour versus the hour and 20 minutes in the Model X. So the watts per mile is important. It does impact your time spent charging because you can go further on the same 10 kilowatts in a Model 3 long range than you can in a Model X. So that's where the watts per mile really show up. Really only on a trip. And I am also add only on a trip, probably with multiple supercharger stops. Because if you can basically charge to 100% before you leave home, make 1 stop and charge there until you have enough range to reach your destination, the difference in watts per mile are probably not going to be detectable. It's only whenever you start having more than 1 stop that you cannot reach your destination, because it doesn't matter if you reach your destination with 10% left state of charge or 15 or 30. It just doesn't matter as long as you can reach your destination, and of course you can charge there. But really, that difference in watts per mile certainly affected the trip by at least 20 minutes, according to Tesla. But let's make this same trip now in a 75D Model X. Well, look what happens. Instead of just doing 2 charging stops, we have to do 4 charging stops. In fact, one of the charging stops that we're going to make is actually going to cause us to go out of our way a little bit to make it. So really, the impact isn't watts per mile. It's how large is my battery pack. The larger battery packs save you from and give you more options on how and when and how long to charge. When you have a smaller pack, you pretty much have to charge every time you can.